In 1957, Sammy Davis Jr. entered a secret relationship with Kim Novak, which during that era was absolutely taboo, being that Novak was a white woman. Apparently, the mob got involved and gave Davis an ultimatum. He had to end his relationship with Novak immediately and marry a black woman within 48 hours, or lose his other eye. Years earlier, he lost an eye as the result of a car accident. Nonetheless, 9 days later, on January 11, 1958, Sammy Davis Jr. married black chorus singer Lorraine White in Las Vegas. In those days, social and cultural barriers were very far apart, as well as dangerous. Interracial marriages were illegal in 24 states. The following story is in regard to interracial relationships where the mob also intervened. Joseph Russo was a Colombo associate who grew up in Lower Manhattan. I don't believe he was related to Andy Mush, but he may have been a cousin or something like that, but Russo's a very common name. In 1970, Russo was living at 133 Lake Drive West near Lake Packanack in Wayne, New Jersey. And on New Year's Eve, he held a party for friends and relatives. To assist serving his guests, he hired Charles Shepard, who was a part-time musician and bartender, and his common-law wife, Shirley Green, who worked as a waitress. The couple was black. 30 guests attended the December 31st, 1970 New Year's Eve bash, which was being held in the basement of Russo's house. Of the 30, it also included children. At some point after the New Year, Russo noticed that Shepard was drinking and seemed to be intoxicated. But making matters worse, he was dancing with his nephew's wife and trying to kiss the woman. It was a party, and Russo was obviously drunk himself and possibly high on cocaine. Instead of pulling Shepard to the side and giving him a tongue lashing, or even throwing him out, Russo decided to run up to his bedroom and grab a .38. He went back into the basement and emptied the gun into Shepard, killing him instantly. Naturally, pandemonium ensued. People were screaming, and some of the guests were trying to calm down the hysterical Shirley Green. Seeing this, Russo went back up into his bedroom, reloaded, returned to the basement, and just as he did with Shepard, he emptied his gun into Green. The partygoers all hurried out of the house. Definitely an effective way of getting your guests to leave. Russo, on the other hand, with the help of some friends, placed the bodies into a car and drove about 10 to 15 miles from his house and dumped them both on a snow-filled street in Morris County. Consequently, Shepard and Green were discovered on January 1st, 1971, New Year's Day. The assigned detectives investigating the double homicide were able to trace the couple's whereabouts back to Russo's residence. However, when they visited the home, they found out that Russo had already moved to Florida. In fact, most of the guests from the party were also in Florida on an all-expense-paid trip courtesy of Russo. After all, he blew these two people away right in front of these people. Enter Joseph Luparelli. For those unfamiliar, he was involved in the 1972 murder of Joey Gallo, who was killed for challenging the Profaci and later Colombo leadership. Luparelli eventually turned himself into the FBI and began cooperating. One of the things he spoke to law enforcement about was the double homicide carried out by Russo on New Year's Eve of 1970, and told the agents that Russo argued with a waiter in front of his house guest and shot the guy and his girlfriend. Supposedly, following the murders, Russo went to Carmine DiPiazzi, who everyone called Sonny Pinto, a Colombo member who Russo knew from growing up around Mulberry Street in Manhattan's Little Italy. DiPiazzi is also the guy who killed Joey Gallo. After listening to what took place, DiPiazzi took Russo to the family's acting boss, Joseph Iacovelli, and both DiPiazzi and Iacovelli were not happy with Russo got himself involved in. Russo explained why he did what he did, saying he blew his top, and adding, "I was sort of drunk, and I shot the guy, and then I shot the girl." They told him that his actions were crazy, and that afterwards he should have burned down his house. Russo explained that he intended on selling the house. To which Iacovelli replied, "You should have thought about that before," and then added, "I know the chief of police out there, probably get in touch with the judge, but it will cost you." Russo said, "I'll go as high as 100,000. As a result of Luparelli relating this conversation to the FBI, he put both Iacovelli and DiBiase in the jackpot. On August 8, 1971, Russo was arrested at his brother's house in Wayne, New Jersey, after sealed indictments were handed down by a Passaic County grand jury on July 20, 1971. There were also warrants issued for Iacovelli and DiBiase for conspiring to enable Russo to avoid prosecution. Russo was released on $75,000 bail, and while out on bail, he went to see Carmine Persico, who at the time was a Colombo captain. Allegedly, Persico told him they could take care of his problem through their connections. The Colombo family had corrupt cops and possibly even judges at their disposal. The initial trial began on August 3, 1971. As far as the evidence, the prosecution had a witness, obviously a partygoer, who seen Russo shoot both victims. The defense lawyers suggested that this witness was the actual shooter and not Russo. There was also a discrepancy over the witness's testimony, where the person stated that Russo fired at one of the victims from close range, approximately 2 feet. The defense called a witness who stated that the victim was shot from a distance of 7 or 8 feet. That trial ended on August 18th, and unsurprisingly, in a mistrial. A second trial ended the same way in June of 1972, when one of the jurors became ill, and the 2 alternates admitted to discussing the case, disqualifying them to sit on a jury. If you haven't liked this video yet, please take the time now and give it a like, as it helps with YouTube's algorithm. Anyone who'd like to show their appreciation for videos like this, or to help me continue making them, can donate with the Super Thanks icon down below, or through the PayPal Cash App links in the video's description. Let me quickly mention my blog, also called Sit Down News, especially for those of you who still enjoy reading. It can be found at sitdownnews.com and is a paid subscription. Ultimately, after the 2 mistrials, on July 26, 1973, a 3-judge federal appeals court ruled that Russo should have never been tried again after the first trial because it was considered double jeopardy. His case and the murder charges against him were dropped. It's quite possible Russo may have had some help in that first trial from those connections that Carmine Persico spoke about, but who knows? Persico himself went to prison in January 1972 for 8 years for hijacking convictions. Personally, I think Russo was extremely lucky. Of course, he lucked out with his case, but what I'm talking about, that he wasn't an associate to another family. His actions at the New Year's Eve party caused negative attention, as well as a domino effect, where the acting boss of a family had legal troubles as a result, and another family would have definitely viewed him as a liability and disposed of him.